Welcome to The Power of the P, the podcast designed to help you become empowered in your truth, free of fear. I'm E.L. Brooks, your host, here to bring you expert advice and effective tools based on neuroscience to help you deal with all the stressors in life, relationships, and work. I'm here to keep you off that struggle bus through the power of the P. Are you ready? Then let's go. Welcome to The Power of the P, episode 6, part 2. Thank you for tuning in. If you're not familiar with the show's format, again, this is like a Dear John life advice show, except for I'm EL, so it's Dear EL, where followers and subscribers send in questions of the things that they're dealing and struggling with. And I'll pick one. I always say maybe two, but it's always one question. And I'll give insight and provide some effective tools that are backed in neuroscience. And I'll offer one key takeaway at the end to log into your memory to help you become more resilient and emotionally stable. So again, this is episode 6, part 2. This is the more extreme, more militant approach to navigating around a narcissist or someone with high narcissistic tendencies. So if you didn't see part 1, do yourself a favor, stop this video right now, go back to part 1, watch that so you can get some context before you start this more extreme approach to dealing with a narcissist. All right. So we left off with part 1 with a key takeaway. Before that, I talked about not taking the bait or being the bait. If you recall, a narcissist's weapon of choice is more gaslighting, and it all keeps coming back to you until you finally say what seems to be everyone's inevitable response to every narcissist's bad behavior. It's the infamous line that ends up being the bait. We get so frustrated and we ask, and in some cases we ask, what the is wrong with you, right? We've all been there. And their reply is always a personal attack, right? You're too sensitive. You're this, you're that. You start to question yourself, is it me? And the more you start to question, the more you tend to think, maybe it is me. Maybe I'm contributing to this problem. And now you're caught up in their manipulation web, and now you become powerless. So this part is short because we're jumping right into the extreme solutions. So get your war paint on, right? This is not your philosophical approach. This is your roll up your sleeves, kick ass, and take names approach. This is how you tap into your warrior persona. And I don't often recommend this approach until people have learned how to master how to flow between, which, by the way, the narcissist unknowingly taps into. And then finally, our sovereign, which is our king and queen persona that few get to achieve and master because you have to be able to subdue your warrior energy and you have to fully embrace your lover energy. But most people are not able to fully embrace their lover persona because they're not vulnerable enough, because the ego and the shadow pulls from the warrior. So their warrior energy is too strong. So I hope I'm not being irresponsible giving you this extreme approach. So I will give it to you with this disclaimer. You need to be able to harness the energy of your warrior without becoming the warrior. In other words, you need to be a general, you need to be strategic. If dealing with a narcissist, most of us have become that gardener in a war, and now it's time for us to switch roles. You have to attack a narcissist like they're the enemy in a battle. And as a general, you need to think about this battle in a new way. And I know this sounds harsh and extreme, but you have to look at that entity harsh. I'm a person who loves always and always, but you can only love something that actually wants to be loved. There's a disconnect with narcissists that don't allow themselves to be loved because to them, that would be a possibility of inviting them to get hurt again. So the defenses don't allow themselves to be vulnerable. It's a threat to their survival. So they come off as having no feelings. And of course, this is generally speaking, because people will fall somewhere in different parts of the spectrum, right? Now, full transparency, I still struggle with this because I'm a lover. I love to love. I love to love hard, actually. But in some cases, you have to learn how to tap into your warrior. You have to kind of look at them as an entity whose main objective is to induce an emotion within you. And that sadistic action feeds them. It actually fuels their power and their strength. You can actually consider them to be vampires because they actually suck the energy and the life out of you without you even realizing it, because it's a gradual process. So in order to effectively navigate around them in an extreme way, you have to disrupt their supply chains. You have to disrupt their entire strategy. Jump into these extreme solutions, okay? Extreme solution number 1 is break the cycle. You have to break the cycle of action, reaction, action, reaction. They act, you react. They're narcissistic, you echo that behavior, and thus you confirm that it's okay. Now, what you don't know is that you've created a style of bantering that is actually toxic for you and normal for them because they now have the upper hand. They say, boo, and you jump, right? So let's view this from a different perspective or within a different context. Say that you are on strikes, right? So you're never throwing any strikes of your own. You're just blocking their strikes. So what do you think the results of that match is going to be? You're going to everything that we do sits on top of a strategy, whether we realize it or not. So in this case, you're doing exactly what they want you to do. And over time, you become completely predictable. Therefore, they can manipulate you at will. Unfortunately, you may not like what I'm about to say next, especially if you find that your narcissist is your intimate partner, a close family member, maybe even an offspring of yours, right? But the only guaranteed strategy to navigate a narcissist is to detach. You have to break away, and obviously within reason, right? Again, if it's an offspring or family member that you have to live with, you need to create strong boundaries to disrupt that symbiotic parasitic action reaction relationship. The cycle is a stimulus response. The stimulus response in detail is they act and you react. They react to your reaction and then you react again. And they feed off of this. And unfortunately, the nutrition that they're feeding on is your confidence, your self-esteem, your self-worth. And as a result, you become more insecure. Remember, I mentioned during an earlier episode, right? The true regulation is knowing how to regulate your sensitivities to mitigate your reactivities, because your reactivities almost always guarantees that you'll activate someone else's sensitivities, right? So this is a pattern that only fuels them because they start to learn all of your weaknesses. And then they get really good and efficient at pushing all of your buttons and triggering your sensitivities, which are your insecurities. You need to have the discipline to say, no matter what happens, I'm not going to let this person affect my mood. I'm not going to let them break me down or tear me down. And if it's not a family member, I would really, really challenge you, and you'll only hear me say this in regards to someone displaying consistent narcissistic behavior, is I really challenge you to ghost them, which is the ultimate detachment move, which is hard for me to say because I'm not a fan of ghosting. I'm a fan of true communication being authentic. But again, you have to look at them as not being a real person. You have to look at them as being robotic in intelligence or artificial in intelligence. Number 2, extreme solution. You're going to love this one. Remember, I said extreme solution, right? Number 2 is become psychopathic. Don't become a psychopath, become psychopathic. So when dealing with a narcissist, psychopathy will trump their narcissism. Remove all emotions, be goal-oriented, and make sure that you keep your information private. Why? Because any and all information will be used against you at all times. Remember, they're trying to get underneath your skin. Don't tell them anything except for the basic need to know information. Practice silence. Remember, you're breaking the cycle of act, react, act, react. So silence is actually deadly to a narcissist. Remember, there's a need for them to control you. And when you're silent, it short circuits their artificial intelligence. It actually disrupts their strategy. So it's silence. It's no contact or even low contact if no contact is not an option. And that will actually generate distress. Now, I'm not trying to get you to play games. That actually comes later. What I'm actually trying to do is to arm you with the intelligence that will somewhat neutralize a narcissist or people with high narcissistic tendencies. Richard Grannon uses a zoology metaphor. He says it's like a bat sending out a sonar signal looking for targets. And if it doesn't get a ping back, right, that bat won't know where you are, right? So the ping back in this metaphor is actually your reply, your reaction, your communication rooted in your emotional reactions, basically. This strategy is for those that have to deal with a family member or an ex-spouse or, sadly, an offspring, right? The strategy is in the event that total detachment is not an option. So what you want to do is you want to use less words, and you want to remember the acronym KISS, which stands for keep it short and simple. Solution number three, extreme, is play their game. This is kind of moving more into the magician persona, right? Where you start to con a little bit. You can either continue to get played, or you can actually start to learn to play their game. This extreme solution is really about taking the fight to them. No more walking on eggshells in defense mode, wondering what's going to happen, right? How are they going to react to you? How are you going to approach them? Because at any given moment, you know that there's a possibility of them launching shells you're exhausting yourself. So I need you to write this down. This is really, really important. If you ever find yourself consistently walking on eggshells around a person, that's actually your nervous system telling you that you're not in the right environment. You're actually in the wrong environment. So I'm going to say that one more time. If you ever find yourself consistently walking on eggshells around a person, that's your nervous system telling you that you're in the wrong environment, period. Remember, our psychological safety is made up of our mindset and our settings. That's the environment that we place ourselves in, right? It's called the settings. And this could be people, places, or being around certain things like guns and weapons. I actually know some people that get anxious around fire pits, right? But if you're consistently walking around on eggshells, that's actually your body telling you that it doesn't feel safe. You need to listen to it. You need to honor that message, even if it's your spouse, your offspring, a family member, whoever, it doesn't matter. Remember, the first line of extreme defense is to actually leave, right? Break ties, break up, heal, and you'll immediately experience a breakthrough, right? I always tell people break ties to break through or break up to wake up. The second line of defense is if this is a family member, an offspring, or spouse, you have to deal with them in a way where you detach and remove all of your emotions, as hard as that sounds. Again, this is extreme solutions. And if you can't do that, be psychopathic. And if that's not in your nature, last is play the game, take the fight to them, right? Keep them off guard, tell lies, make up things to let them know how awful you have it, right? Because misery loves company. Don't let them see you sweat. Don't let them see you happy, especially, right? Just let them see you agnostic and neutral. Don't let them know how your true feelings. Don't let them know your true feelings. Don't share anything. Keep communication and contact at a bare minimum. Use whatever tools that you need to make sure that you're deceptive and that you're in control. And last, use manipulation if necessary. Manipulate the situation. So you need to figure out what works for you. These are extreme, some may say harsh solutions, right? And I will totally admit that. What I would say is that you need to be intentional about what you want. You need to figure out what your primary goal is, assuming that you must be in contact with this individual. Maybe for you, you share custody and your primary goal is to not get triggered, not to have a trauma response during the exchange, because that ex of yours always makes negative comments that immediately makes you feel less than, right? Whatever your goal is, come up with a strategy that puts you in control or removes you from the emotional harm, right? Now, you can make arrangements to have a neutral location where your kids can be dropped off at a friend's where there's completely no interaction between your ex, right? Your ex and yourself is simply communicating with a middle person. Now, it would have to be a really, really good friend, but chances are that the narcissist will not display the same behavior with that friend as they do with you because there's a different dynamic at play, right? The last part of this key takeaway is, I would say, is like when dealing with a narcissist, it's important that you prioritize your emotional well-being by setting firm boundaries and maintaining a sense of reality and practicing self-care. You need to learn how to recognize manipulative behaviors. You need to communicate your boundaries assertively and limit contact if necessary to protect yourself from emotional harm. Remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and compassion. It's important to prioritize your own mental health and happiness above all else, right? But unfortunately, most don't have the ability to be empathetic or compassionate, which means in some extreme cases, when dealing with those that are inserted in your life that cannot be removed, you have to detach emotionally and strategically. Now you know. One love. Today's episode was sponsored by Help to Love, a platform to open your mind, achieve mental agility, and integrate into the person that you're meant to be. With a wealth of resources and expert advice at your fingertips, Help to Love makes prioritizing your mental well-being easier than ever. It's a non-judgmental approach to mental wellness to help you design that 10x life you deserve. Sign up today at www.helptolove.com. Join the thousands of users who have already discovered the transformative power. Register for the free webinar that will open your mind and plant seeds for your ultimate breakthrough. If you felt this episode was helpful and insightful, please like, share, and subscribe so that you'll be notified of all of our upcoming content and special announcements. I'm E.O. Brooks, your host. As always, I thank you for your support and especially your time. One love.